Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com. Purple Daily, presented by Surly Brewing Company.
Yes. Welcome in to the countdown headquarters of the world, at least the Vikings world. We are smack dab in the middle of Judd's top 25 Vikings of all time. We're only 5 in, and already people are fighting with you. People are arguing, calling you an idiot.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, how do you feel after the first 5?
This is why we do these. I was thrilled yesterday. I thought I'd get, 2 or 3 tweets back disagreeing or something. I got a ton. Some agreed, disagreed, some sent in. And I said, send in your top 25, folks. Like, this is the most inexact science of all time.
Wait a second. You thought we were going to put a Vikings-related list out on this show, this world-renowned show, and you were going to get 2 tweets about it? That's what you thought? Where's your confidence level in the show, in the audience?
My confidence is high, but it's June, and I thought, okay, it's a top 25 all time. I don't know. I didn't know what to expect. And what I got, I absolutely love. And look, here's the thing. It's going to get worse. Like, message to Judd.
What, your list is going to get worse?
It's going to get worse. Not the list. The feedback, the vitriol that this list is going to generate. I mean, it's only started. We're 5 in, 25 to 21. Oh, this is going to get way. It's going to get more intriguing when people really fully comprehend who's not on this list.
Yeah, we got Declan back from the semi-genius day after the vacation day off, which a lot of people in the comments have approved of. Are you feeling refreshed?
Well, yes, I am. But yesterday I played in my first ever scramble at and it was. Phil, I don't know if you're aware of this, but it was like a heat index like 110 yesterday here in the Twin Cities. It was hotter in Minneapolis than what it was in St. Pete when I left on Sunday, which was just kind of a little bit of mind blowing.
So you couldn't handle the conditions and it
was really interesting. The scramble setup was kind of strange. Like there was only like 12 true holes of golf, and then there was some longest drive and like close to the pin. Which obviously I was nowhere near any of those. So it was just a weird little day, but it was nice to like kind of take some time off after your time off, But now I'm back.
I enjoy scrambles. I enjoy playing with 3 awesome golfers and then contributing like 2 shots. Give me like one putt and a chip or something, and then I
had like one birdie putt from like 15 feet out, and I was like, I'm good. I did my job. I'm okay. Thank you.
So we're going to jump into Judd's list here. We're going to count from 20 down to 16. We also have a really interesting what people are saying about the Vikings segment today that I don't think I've shared much of this with you guys, but I've had something stashed for a few weeks that is really interesting. But the show is also presented by TCL. Redefine creativity with the TCL 30V 5G smartphone. Enjoy blazing fast 5G speed and an AI-powered 50-megapixel triple camera system. Ultra-realistic and true-to-life visuals powered by Next Vision. Find out more at TCL.com. All right. So Declan's jumping in here. I don't know if he caught any of the discussion about the first 5 players on this list. So for Declan and for other people that maybe didn't catch the first portion, who are your first 5 from 25 to 21? And then we can jump into the next 5 on the list.
All right. The controversial first 5 unveiled on Monday's Purple Daily started at number 25 with Scott Studwell, who, as I told you, Phil, I think he could be called Mr. Viking in some ways. He's a guy who was around for 14 years, was a 9th round draft pick, a round that doesn't even exist. 24, Steve Hutchinson. 23, Matt Burke, also controversial. 22, Antoine Winfield. And 21, wide receiver Anthony Carter.
I feel like Burke was the one that people pushed back the most on, and Listen, I don't agree with Matt Burke's politics necessarily. We don't have to talk politics on the show, but he's one of the best centers in Vikings history.
Yeah.
So I guess I was a little surprised by that pushback. Unless people are just like, he's a jerk, I don't want him on the list.
No,
well,
I got
it's a football list.
I got one with a decent point that said they felt that Burke and Hutchinson should have been flipped, which is fine. But, I mean, Burke was a career-long Viking until he left for Baltimore. Hutch had a lot of success with the Seahawks and then came here. But, again, that's the fun part. Like, it's not just the names. It's where they're at that can cause great.
Yeah, I mean, Hutch is a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Matt Burke is not. But Burke had more seasons with the Vikings, more of a true Viking, I guess, because he was drafted by the Vikings. So
10 years. 10 years as opposed to, what, like 6 years? So
Yeah. And we should also mention again that you are not including active players on this
Yes.
list.
Yes.
So don't get mad about Harrison Smith. I mean, I would have thrown a couple of the active guys on here, but this is your list, your choice.
No Kirk Cousins, folks. No Kirk Cousins.
This is a cop-out. This is you avoiding
No Kirk Cousins.
the decision to put Kirk Cousins on this list or
no,
not.
Kirk Cousins would be at this. I'm going to tell you, as this list unfolds, you will understand that Kirk Cousins is nowhere near this list right now.
But I think a lot of people would look at this and say, Anthony Carter, okay, had a couple nice seasons. Is Anthony Carter a better player than Kirk Cousins? I think so. But a lot of people are going to push back at this.
Yeah, that's why I'm here, to help out.
Okay.
You're also
the
resident.
resident. You're the historian of this show too, because you go back the furthest. And I think what happens is, especially in football, we don't. In baseball, we celebrate old players, right? We celebrate we still talk about Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle and these players from 75 or 100 years ago. I feel like in football, you retire and like no one has thought about Antoine Winfield in 10 years. No one, all due respect to the Purple People Eaters, but they're out there pushing their own brand. Like it's not like they're at the front of the conversation. So you are here to bring players that might be overlooked as well back into the forefront, which I think we can appreciate. So
that's very fair to say. Very fair. All right, are we ready? So we're going to go from 20 to 16 today.
Okay. What a journey. What a journey.
Without further ado, number 20 on this list, also a Hall of Fame player who had a lengthy career, spent 7 years here, went to 4 Pro Bowls, and was on the NFL's all-decade team of not only the 80s, but the 90s, tackle Gary Zimmerman.
Wow.
Gary was a phenomenal player. Had a falling out contractually, I think, and there were some issues with Denny. He was traded to Denver where he won a Super Bowl, I want to say in 93, but he was among the line of great Vikings tackles. He's up there. He was fantastic. I gave this one a little bit of debate, but 4 Pro Bowls, 7 years, all decade for a portion of the time that he played here for sure qualified him. So I put him on at number 20, Gary Zimmerman.
If we also were making a most underrated Vikings list, wouldn't a guy like him fall in there somewhere? I mean, some of these guys, like if you're a defensive lineman and you get sacks in the 70s or something, right? Well, they didn't count sacks in the 70s, but your legend gets carried. If you're just an offensive lineman from 30 plus years ago, I think it's hard for you to stay top of mind with people. Yep. And so a guy like Gary Zimmerman, and he didn't have a chance to play with necessarily the Super Bowl teams from the 70s because he came along later. So it's kind of a lost era of Vikings football almost in the minds of most people under the age of 40.
And I feel like the great players at these positions I have in the last, 3 or 4 years, I've grown to appreciate them more in watching when you don't see great players. So like if a tackle is great, you start to just sort of take it for granted, right? Like, of course he made that block. Of course he pancaked that guy. Of course he did this. And then you watch guys that aren't good at it, right? Like guards too. Centers now. And you're like, oh, Matt Burke did a lot of really good things that perhaps were tougher than I appreciated. So I feel like what we've seen of late from the Vikings offensive line almost gives me a greater appreciation for the greats because they were really good and we've seen some potentially really bad at it.
Yeah. Also, I would add to like the 1987 run where they're playing on the road 3 times en route to the doorstep of the Super Bowl. You don't win road games against playoff teams, 2 of them, and then play toe-to-toe with Washington without great offensive and defensive linemen.
Absolutely.
Winning the battle in the trenches in those games. As we've seen with some recent Vikings teams getting smoked in the trenches as they go on the road in playoff games.
This is very true. All right, number 19 on my list of the greatest 25 Vikings, according to Judd Zolgad, is defensive tackle, more on point, 3 technique, Kevin Williams.
Wow.
His 60 sacks, get this, you guys. His 60 sacks with the Vikings trail only Alan Page and John Randall among Vikings defensive tackles. And I've always said this. I think Kevin is a borderline, he's not going to make it, Hall of Fame player. At his height, he was absolutely dominant, fantastic, and he sort of got us to where things are today now, in interior defensive line wise, where it's gone from 3 techs who can be just incredibly athletic and really effective. Kevin consistently pushed the pocket, and I don't know up until then that a bunch of guys had, but 19 defensive tackle. He was a very quiet guy, but he was very good on Sundays. Kevin Williams.
This one actually says something about just the state of the franchise after 60 years. And if I could even zoom out to the first 7 guys on this list here, you got one Pro Football Hall of Famer in Steve Hutchinson, who's 24th, and I don't disagree with that. I want to see the rest of the list, and maybe I'd move him up or down, but yeah, sure. Like that's fine. You got a couple very borderline Hall of Famers in Kevin Williams, and I think Antoine Winfield is sort of a borderline Hall of Famer. And we have 18 names to go. I mean, this franchise is loaded with players. With players, and it's no shock that they're maybe the most successful franchise in American team sports to not have a championship. And as the rest of these names get unveiled, I think it becomes even more puzzling. How have you not?
That's exactly what it is. That was my thought. Like, I'm going through, and it's a litany. It's just a litany of just great names and players and stories. How did you not stumble into a Super Bowl, a championship? Like. And I mean, there will be, by the time we're done here, there will be one common thread of the probably why. But that being said, yeah, you're exactly right. Like, it's just these Hall of Fame, borderline Hall of Fame, just great players up and down. And 1961 you start, and it's going to go on, 2022 coming up, and you still don't have one championship, or at least Super Bowl championship. All right, number 18. Way back machine again, but this guy was great. A linebacker who blocked, and I'm going to say this slowly because it's off the charts. The rules have changed, but still. A linebacker who blocked 20 and a half kicks in his career as well. 20 and a half blocked
What's
kicks.
The half? How do you half block a kid? It's like
guys?
four hands.
He shared one. Like, he probably went up and somebody else went up and they both deflected it. And
that seems like a statistical anomaly. So 2 guys with 2 separate hands.
Yep.
Touch the football at the same time.
It's the 70s, but nonetheless, 20 plus block kicks. It's incredible. Matt Blair.
2 hands were used a lot.
Matt Blair.
Blair. 6 Pro Bowls. 6 Pro Bowls, 20 and 1/2 block kicks. Studwell-esque, I think, in success as well, but probably a little bit more of just a naturally talented player. The late Matt Blair is number 18.
Okay, this is not a shot at Matt Blair, but if he blocked 20 and a half kicks in the 70s, what does that say about 70s kickers and 80s?
Oh, yeah. Hey, dude.
Let's get some elevation on those kicks, guys. Come on now.
The game has changed. Well, this is when I think the key was, and the Vikings exploited this consistently, this is back in the day where you could get on a teammate's back and launch upwards.
Oh, that was legal.
So
okay.
Like
you could leapfrog. Okay.
You leapfrog on your teammate's back, which, by the way, had to hurt like hell, didn't it? Like, if a guy leaps onto your back, that would hurt a lot.
I think if he cleats you or something, it would be painful.
Yeah. I wouldn't like that.
I weigh nothing. Like, you could let me pop off your back, and I could probably get up there.
That's true. Now, if you had like cleats on, it would hurt. But that's a very good point.
I think they should allow that in today's NFL. Just get the best athletes getting a running start and just launching themselves off 300-pound defensive tackles.
Do you know how much fun?
And see how the kickers have to react to it.
Do you know how much fun if guys could launch up again?
Like, can you imagine Honey Badger getting a head start, just a 15-yard sprint, and leaping off the back of a 300-pound defensive tackle? He's flying through the air.
No, he flies right past the ball.
Yeah, just over the kicker.
He takes off out of the stadium.
So Matt Blair, how many? He was part of a couple Super Bowl teams in the mid-late 70s, right? 75-ish, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
6 Pro Bowls. So, yeah, he is a guy who had... And when I started watching the Vikings in 78, he still had some good years left. He played into the 80s, but he was definitely part of that core. He was a young player on the end probably of the great teams. that, of course, went to 4 Super Bowls and won none. But I digress.
Okay.
Matt Blair is 18. Number 17. I wonder if this one will be a little bit controversial because he didn't get off to a great start in his career, but he certainly ended strong before ultimately, surprisingly, walking away from the game. Ohio State running back Robert Smith. Robert Smith rushed for more than 1,000 yards every season from 97 through 2000 and then abruptly retired. The thing with Smith that you have to keep in mind is, so at the start of the time that I watched the Vikings, Chuck Foreman was declining and basically done, okay? When they drafted Smith in the 90s, they hadn't had what you would consider like a really top-notch back since Chuck. And Smith got hurt and had problems, but the end of his career was really impressive, and he was a good player. So it's a little bit controversial, perhaps, but at 17, I got Robert Smith.
Well, no, I mean he is the starting 1,000-yard running back for, at the time, the greatest offense in NFL history, and I think that means something. Now, of course, I think Marshall Faulk gets the credit in that era because he was the best running back in the NFL, and Terrell Davis, and then the Rams went and broke the Vikings points record the year after the Vikings set it in 1998.
Right.
So I almost feel like if that offense were to have held the title, so to speak, of most points in the season for another 10 or 15 years, maybe Robert Smith would have been more appreciated. And it's funny because he ended the 4-year run of 1,000-yard seasons. First of all, he was only 28 when he retired. His last year was probably the best year. It was the bell cow year for him in 2000, where he carried almost 300 times for 1,500 yards, and then he just pieced out 5 yards a carry, and just didn't want to play anymore. Just wanted to take his money and retire. But I don't think he was the driving force of the offense necessarily, but I think he belongs on or near this list. Some people might take issue, but we'll see how.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, and he took over for an injured Terry Allen, if I remember right, didn't he? Terry Allen was a pretty good running back for the Vikings.
Tore his ACL, right?
Tore up his knee, yeah.
Yes. So Smith, number 17 on this list, and that gets us to the final name for today's list, number 16. 85.5 sacks in 6 seasons, is 6th on the Vikings all-time list, and acquired in my time watching the Vikings, one of the smartest trades that this team made, Jared Allen. Jared was acquired in, was it draft time 2008, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And the Vikings gave up a haul, first-round picks, bunch of draft picks, but that was a trade. When teams say, I can't trade draft picks, I mean, these draft picks, who knows? I mean, it could be great players. The Vikings were desperate for an effective pass rushing defensive end off that right side, and Allen delivered in spades. And this is one of, I think, the best trades that I've seen this franchise make. It certainly had a huge role in their advancement to the 2009 conference championship game. Jared Allen, number 16.
I love this, man. I love this. I think he's sort of the figurehead of the modern great Vikings defensive lines that we've seen. I think if you're going to take everyone in the last 15 or 20 years, including Danielle Hunter and the Williams Wall and Brian Robinson and all these really good players sort of post John Randall era, and there's the John Randall, Chris Dolman era, and then before that you go back further and there was different eras. I think you put all the Vikings defensive linemen from the last 20 years in a bin, and he is the figurehead. Personality, the sacks, just everything about him. And yeah, like that signing was I'm trying to think of some of the big Wilf moves, but that was in terms of the Wilf ownership era, because that was before the Brett Favre move.
Yes.
They did sign Bernard Berrien around that same time, maybe a month beforehand, but this was kind of the big
trade.
Hey, yep.
This is a trade, sure. and like, I mean, that it's the exact type of trade that I don't think Spielman makes if Childress is not here to say, make the trade. Like, it was a very anti-Rick trade. But it's a great trade. Like, This is the type of trade where you said, this team is good, but we are definitely missing, 2 or 3, at least 2, because quarterback as well, key ingredients. And you've got this guy.
The 2009 Vikings should have won the Super Bowl, and we've litigated that a million times on this show. And the two biggest things that put a good team, 2007, they were 500, and then they were kind of making their way. They had some good pieces, but the two pieces that put them over the top from 08 to 09, going 10-6 and then 12-4, were Jared Allen on defense and Brett Favre on offense, right? And you needed Adrian and Percy and the Williams wall and stuff, but those were we got a pretty good team that's kind of 500. Let's get one of the best pass rushers in the league. Let's get a Hall of Fame quarterback, and let's go and see what happens. And it turned them into one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the NFL at the end of the day.
Exactly. So 20 through 16, 20, Gary Zimmerman, the offensive tackle. 19, Kevin Williams. 18, Matt Blair. 17, Robert Smith. And 16, Jared Allen on my top 25.
There it is. So Scott Studwell, 25. Steve Hutchinson, Matt Burke, Antoine Winfield, Anthony Carter, and then the 5 that you just unveiled right there. So we got 10 of the 25 greatest Vikings according to Judd. And this list is sponsored in part by the Minnesota Wind Chill, the local professional American Ultimate Disc League team. That's right. There is an Ultimate Disc League team in the state of Minnesota. Their next game is this upcoming Saturday, June 25th at 6 o'clock. At the Seafoam Stadium in St. Paul. $12 adult tickets, $5 youth tickets, and kids 10 and under get in free. Also, all adults 21 plus attending the game receive a coupon for a free beer at Surly right after the game that night at the official post-game party. Details at windchillultimate.com. That's windchillultimate.com. Speaking of Surly, cheers to all these guys who have made the hallowed grounds, the hallowed list of Judd Zolgad here.
Oh, that's exactly right. And you are aware, ladies and gentlemen, that today is the first day of summer. So it is officially here. I've been teasing it for a week plus now, but no more teasing.
Been teasing summer. It's coming soon.
No more teasing. No more teasing.
Judd here for summer.
Summer, it's
Evening,
here.
Judd.
And that means it's the summer of Surly, which of course means that it is time to delve into all of those delicious Surly summer beers, the Supreme, the Logic Bomb, absolutely all of them fantastic. There is only one way on a hot day to cool off, because you're thinking to yourself, I need a really refreshing good beer. The Supremes, Logic Bomb, check them out. Surly Brewing, you can't go wrong. Of course, drink responsibly, but quench that thirst.
Love it, love it. All right, before we get into what people are saying about the Vikings, Declan, now that you've had a chance to shake off the vacation cobwebs, you've got the first 10 guys on this list here. Any egregious things happening in the first 10 names from your perspective? Anything that you say, what is Judd doing with this guy in this spot?
What is he smoking?
So who was the guard that you had on this list just earlier?
It was a tackle, Gary
tackle?
Zimmerman.
Gary
So,
Zimmerman.
and this is just my
Declan's
era.
he's proving my point here. The lost era.
I have no idea who that player was. You could have said anyone, and I would have been like, oh, when he was a tackle, and you'd give me the same pedigree and resume. I'm like, I've never heard of that player. Doesn't mean he doesn't deserve to be on the list. I just don't know who that is. I know who Matt Blair is, but I think it's mostly been okay. I think it's been fine. Jared Allen only was here for 6 years in Minnesota, but he was such a figurehead and was so damn good that I think he is able to be ahead of guys like Kevin Williams, like Matt Burks, like Steve Hutchinson. So far, I don't think there's anything too egregious. It's just that some of those players, to Phil's point, a lot of people who are my age have never even heard of before.
Here's the crazy thing about Gary Zimmerman. So he is a Pro Football Hall of Famer, which I forgot about. Like I grew up, and I do remember Gary Zimmerman as a kid because I remember the Jerry Burns Vikings from the early 90s, and so I do remember his name as a kid. I forgot that he was a Pro Football Hall of Famer. He did play the last 4 or 5 seasons in Denver with John Elway, and I believe won a Super Bowl at the end in 1997. And so he's remembered at his peak more as John Elway's left tackle and a guy who won a Super Bowl in Denver. But the first half of his career, a Hall of Fame career, was with the Minnesota Vikings from 1986 through 1992.
Yep.
Pretty amazing.
History lessons are being taught on this show right now. That's what it's all about. History
That's great,
lessons.
Yeah. Honor the
Purple
men
Daily.
in the trenches. Honor the men in the trenches. Gary Zimmerman also was he was not in the regular draft in 1984. He was drafted by the New York Giants in the first round of the supplemental draft
Yes.
in 1984 out of Oregon.
And if I'm not mistaken, Chris Carter also taken in that draft, the supplemental draft by the Eagles back in the day.
Okay. So put some respect on Gary Zimmerman's name, all you young folk out there.
That's what this is here for, though. No, you see, we're trying to educate, we're trying to teach. There's no problem with that. Come one, come all. Controversial list. Again, I look forward to the feedback because I think it might be just as intriguing as it was on Monday.
Yep. Love it. All right. What are people saying about the Minnesota Vikings? We like to scour the internet and put our ears on the ground to find out what are national outlets saying? What are people inside the building saying about the Vikings?
I'm listening.
So I found this. I've actually been sitting on this for a couple months. This came out in April. And I don't know, we had a lot of fodder with the draft and different things and different rankings and stuff. So I think today is a good time to bust out the Football Outsiders Mediocrity Dynasty Rankings. The article is called Kirk Cousins, the Vikings, and Dynasties of Mediocrity. Okay?
Okay.
So here's the premise. I'm just going to read this from Football Outsiders. 2 years ago, Football Outsiders proudly ranked the top dynasties of all time, granting the modern-day New England Patriots the title of the most successful era in NFL history. And then 1 year ago, Football Outsiders ranked the top anti-dynasties of all time, granting the modern-day Cleveland Browns the title of the least successful era in NFL history. And so this year, we must complete the trifecta, they said. We are gathered here to discover the most average era of football in NFL history, the teams that could not escape the gravitational pull of 500 football, the adequate, the forgettable, and the occasionally regrettable. No trophies to honor, no top draft picks to whiff on. These teams dedicated themselves to neutrality and sufficiency in ways that are awe-inspiring to witness. And in the modern era, that's arguably worse than just bottoming out. So they're looking at the most, not the worst, but the most mediocre eras in NFL history.
Okay.
And here's the write-up for the Vikings portion. While you haven't been able to overlook Minnesota in recent years, you also haven't really been able to look hard at them as they keep bringing back an aging roster year after unsuccessful year. They are second only to Washington in total years on this mediocrity list, despite only being founded in 1961. So they went back like almost 100 years in NFL history, and they looked at every single era of mediocrity as they define it. The Vikings show up 4 times on this list. The Vikings have had 4 mediocrity dynasties in their team history. Okay? 1978 through 1987. So a 10-year run, where for 9 of the 10 seasons, they were within 2 games of 500. So 7 wins, 8 wins, 8 wins, 9 wins. There was a 5-4 season in there during one of the strikes,
82,
I think.
yeah.
82. And so 4 playoff trips over that 10-year stretch. 1 trip to the NFC Championship game, but no Super Bowl runs. 1991 through 1997. The Vikings had 5 seasons of 8-8 or 9-7 and no true playoff runs. The third mediocrity dynasty was 2003 through 2007, where they were exactly 40-40 over this stretch across the end of the Mike Tice era and the beginning of the Brad Childress era. And then the Mike Zimmer era is the 4th mediocrity dynasty, where the Vikings averaged exactly 9 wins between 2014 and 2021. And so I don't think they took the top mediocre dynasty. I think the Steelers had like a 16-year mediocrity dynasty or something, but the Vikings showed up on this list more than any team. They have more mediocrity dynasties than any team except for Washington, and that's why Kirk is in the title here, because Kirk is part of a Washington mediocre dynasty as well. So Kirk is the modern-day face of mediocrity dynasties, according to Football Outsiders.
Unfortunately, probably post-Fran, Kirk is the poster child for this team. Like he reflects what this team does, which is they're not really bad. They've got some weeks where they look like they could beat the world. They look fantastic, right? But then you look at the end of a decent sample size and you see what? Okay, they won a bunch. They lost a bunch. 500 football. Yeah, that it is remarkable. The sad thing is this. So I considered the start of the Green run to be successful because I think in all but 95 in Green's like first 6 years, they made the playoffs. But But I think the world sees it more accurately, as you just talked about, which is, well, yeah, you made the playoffs, but did you win games? And, unfortunately, for a large part of that, the answer was no.
Yeah, and they weren't going 12-4. They were sneaking into the playoffs at 9-7 under.
But being a Vikings fan or follower screws with your mind. Like you begin to accept and see good in things that the majority are like, well, that's not that great. And you're like, no, they went to the playoffs, right? Like, yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to go through some of these other ones here. So basically the Dan Marino Dolphins are one of the mediocre dynasties on this list. So if they went to the Super Bowl in 84 or 84, and they got beat. And then starting in 1986 through 1999, they had a 14-year run of mediocrity where they averaged 9 wins per season for 14 years with Dan Marino.
Yep.
There's so many from
and
like
he never
the 70s.
went back. Like, it's remarkable.
Yeah. The Bears from 2007 through 2013. I think that was the back end of the Lovie Smith era with Jay Cutler, where they were just regularly 8-8, 7-9, right?
Yeah.
You'd have to recall some of these other ones, like the Green Bay Packers from 78 through 85 averaged.
Oh, that was a lot of. They were bad.
7.5 wins per season.
Lynn Dickey at quarterback. That was
okay.
Not great football.
Okay, so I mean, it's a really interesting article and set of data here, but it is celebrating the teams that have the largest gravitational pull toward 500, which we all know the Vikings have a strong one.
The most incredible one, I think, without a doubt to me, Marino. Like, that is a generational Hall of Fame. Like, he's the type of guy where if you got him, you'd say, we're going to win a couple at least, right? Like, and he almost immediately goes to a Super Bowl. They lose, but you're like, well, he'll be back.
Yeah.
Like think about going into what you just said, 13 years? 13 years of that with him as your quarterback. That's almost undoable.
Does it say something about Marino? Maybe Marino puts up all these stats, right? Was there a leadership chip missing, or did they just do a crappy job of putting a roster around him for a decade and a half?
I think the latter more so, but I also think the era changed as well. So, like, if you drafted a similar talent now to Dan and put him on a team with the way that the rules are completely geared towards passing, I think things might be different. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. Because, I mean, back then you could blast QBs into the sun and nobody cared. I mean, you could. It's brutal. Watch the films.
Declan's going to be blasting drives into the sun all summer at the Meadows at Mystic. I can tell you that.
That's right.
He's not going to the Live Tour like Brooks Koepka is.
No. I'm not cashing out. I'm taking lessons down at the Meadows at Mystic Lake, which you can do. You can book your tee times. You can book your lessons. You can shop the apparel shop. You can grab a beer on the nice Meadows Bar and Grill patio. There's plenty of options, not just golf to do at the Meadows Bar and Grill. But if you'd like to book a tee time, if you'd like to book that lesson, check them out. It's golfthemeadows.com to learn more. It's an award-winning 18-hole public golf course just down the road on 169 from the Twin Cities. The Meadows at Mystic Lake. Book your tee time at golfthemeadows.com.
Nice. Judd, tell everyone how you've been losing weight over the past, 10 months or so.
That, of course, is thanks to my friends at Livia Weight Control Centers. Down 40 pounds, and here's the most important part. I'm keeping it off because that's the toughest thing to do. And now you're saying, well, Judd, if you can do it, I can do it. How do I do it? And I've got a deal for you. It is the Simple Start Plan, only $59. That's right, to lose the weight, all your clothes fit, you feel great, and then to keep that weight off. $59. How? 855-GO-LIVEA. Livia, LIVEA.com. Inside or outside the state, if you're in, I don't know, a PD fan in Florida, New York, Los Angeles, guess what? You can Skype in, virtual assistants, Livia.com, LIVEA.com. That is how you start. Check it out today and begin a weight loss journey that I can tell you right now, folks, incredibly gratifying.
Also, a quick note, too, about our friends at Federated Insurance. So coming up later this summer here, July 24th, 25th, it's once again the Federated Challenge, which helps raise money for Big Brothers Big Sisters. $44 million raised since 2005. Big Brothers Big Sisters is a great organization that essentially provides children facing adversity with strong professional one-to-one mentoring relationships with bigs, so to speak. So the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization currently serves more than 135,000 children nationwide, 5,000 of those in Minnesota. If you have interest in becoming a big or finding out more about how you can help, federatedchallenge.org. That's federatedchallenge.org. All right, so that's what people are saying about the Minnesota Vikings. We will continue the countdown of Judd's top 25 Vikings of all time tomorrow. I mean, we've already had Hall of Famers. We've had multi-time Pro Bowlers up and down this list. We've had sack champions, guys who went on to win Super Bowls with other organizations. This is quite the list of 10 so far, and we still have 15 to go. So definitely hit us up with your lists and your feedback, and go chide Judd for how wrong he is about his list.
I love it.
At Jay Zolgad on Twitter. See you guys.